Oh, and that's a brilliant effort. And they've turned it right around. In the space of a few minutes, Saudi Arabia grabbed control of the game.
Welcome to another edition of Dawri. The Asian Cup is over. Qatar have been crowned champions of the continent, and we're back to business of domestic football. So, welcome to Dawri, the latest episode, of course, and absolutely such a lot to get through. Quite incredible of what's gone on and what's about to happen as well. So much to unpack. And of course, we've got our special guest, as always. With me is Arab News sports editor Ali Khaled. Ali, as I've just said, so much has happened since our last show. I don't know where to start. I guess there is only one place, and it's the AFC Asian Cup final. Qatar beating Jordan 3-1 with a hat-trick of penalties. What did you make of it?
Hi, Peter. Good to be back. Good to see you again. Yes, so Qatar are champions. Congratulations to them. The Akram Afi final hat-trick. Hat-trick of penalties. Some will call it the Akram Afi final. Some might call it other things. You know, the fallout from the match continues, like a massive media war, really, like going on between Jordan and Qatar. I mean, you expect that on social media, of course, a lot of anger that there was 3 penalties given and all that. But really, it's spilt over to their like newspapers and media, and there's been a back and forth. It hasn't been great to see. I mean, first up, you got to say, Pete, that none of the penalties were particularly outrageous decisions. Maybe the first one was a little bit soft, I thought, maybe, but there was contact on all 3 of them. I mean, many people saying, experts are saying, they're all are penalties, but, context or perception is everything in football sometimes. Any team, regardless of the level of football, what sort of match it is, getting 3 penalties, will always raise eyebrows. People always say, like everything went their way. When that team is the hosts, Qatar in particular, in the final of the Asian Cup, your nuance is the last thing that opposition fans will take into account. So, the feeling in Jordan is that they've been robbed. There's all sorts of memes of like, people showing players walking out onto the pitch at the start of the game, and the referee whistling, giving a penalty before the match has even started, or the referee saying to players, just dive, I'll give you a penalty, and all sorts of things. There was, the Qatari media has hit back at some of the comments from the Jordanian players. It's not just on social media where you would expect it. You expect like the back and forth to rage, but in the media as well, in newspapers. So it hasn't been great. Look, you can understand why, as I said, like the Jordan fans will feel hard done by. They were excellent in the second half. I think they were for a good 20 minutes, 25 minutes, plenty of chances. Barsham in Qatar's goal was great. It saved them, but great goal, great equalizer. But then again, just minutes later, they get a penalty against them, and then another penalty in stoppage time. I think, like I said, none of the penalties were outrageous, but they feel really hard done by. It's a sad way for the tournament to be remembered, or the final to be remembered, I would say, not tournament. It's been a great tournament. Yeah. It was a brilliant month. We've been discussing it with all our guests over the last 5 weeks. And it has been great to watch. We did get 2 Arab two Arab teams in the final. A fantastic outcome. Absolutely. That didn't look likely, after only these 2 teams made it out to the round of 16. But in the end, we got it. So that we looked forward to that. Yeah, and unfortunately, there's been like that little bit of controversy, or not a little bit, a lot of controversy as far as the Jordanians are concerned. We'll keep an eye on it. But yeah, I would say it's hasn't really gone away. There's still a lot of anger in Jordan.
Listen, Ali, as a losing team, you grasp for anything that can maybe benefit your loss, which is obviously what's happened there. Take nothing away from Qatar. Take nothing away from the man who had to score 3 spot kicks in a final. Let's look at the positives.
Absolutely.
And goals are goals. The penalties are awarded. They still have to be scored. And Qatar, I agree with you. I've seen the penalties over again. I would give them. I might question the first. If the first had been a second or third penalty, I may have questioned giving that. But no, all in all, I feel a fair result.
And you're right, Peter. And look, you're really good point. You still have to put those penalties away. Let's not forget in the World Cup final last year, 2 of Mbappe's hat-trick were, 2 goals from the hat-trick were penalties as well. If you got to give them and you got to put them away. Akram Afif was the player of the tournament, a fantastic player. Really disappointed in the World Cup a couple of years ago, but came back strongly in this one. So congratulations to Qatar.
Great stuff. Listen, onto club football, and it's great to get back to some of our bread and butter of what we do here on the show. But before the latest round of the Saudi Pro League, there's the little matter of round 16 first legs of the AFC Champions League. Mixed results for the Saudi teams, Ali.
Yes, I mean, to be expected, I guess, to a certain degree, since 2 of them were playing each other. Cristiano Ronaldo is back with a bang, scoring the winner for Nasser against Faiha on Wednesday. And though it's a narrow lead, I mean, you would expect them to reach the last 8 in the Western Zone now. Etihad had quite an interesting trip to Uzbekistan from the moment they landed. Like everybody was, as is the case with a lot of Saudi teams this season when they go to on the continent, a lot of excitement about the foreign players, a lot about excitement about all these European players, so players that came from the European leagues. So there was a lot of excitement in Uzbekistan. A lot of people wanted to see Karim Benzema, and of course he was left at home because of injuries. Quite a bit of disappointment there when the Etihad players. The night before the match, they were training at Nafbahor's, their opponent's stadium. When they got off the bus, there was a lot of people chanting Benzema's name. They were asking the Saudi media members, where is he? But of course, he had stayed at home because of his injury. In the end, 0-0 result. The match itself was not, didn't give us anything too exciting. I mean, again, you would expect Etihad, at home, to complete the progress. Finally, Hilal left it very, very late to beat Sapahan of Iran. Coming from behind, no less. And it was 1-1 going into injury time before Alexander Mitrovic, who else, and Abdallah Al-Hamdan. I know your old favorite, Mitrovic, and Abdallah Al-Hamdan scored to make a 3-1 win. And, of course, Al-Hilal, one of the big favorites for the tournament, with 1 foot in the next round already.
Great stuff. Listen, Mitro keeps doing it. We could do him back at my team, Newcastle United, Ali. I'll tell you what, seeing as Callum Wilson's been ruled out for another 312 weeks with his latest injury. Listen, time to delve into what the Saudi Pro League holds for the rest of the season. It's been a lengthy 6-week break because of the Asian Cup, of course. And of course, we love our Saudi Pro League. I'm such a fan of the domestic scene. And who better to have with us than Matt Monaghan, expert on all things Arab football. Matt, welcome back to the show.
How's it going, guys?
Great to have you back, Brad. Good to see you, mate. And it was great. And it's great that, we've been having regular chats during the Asian Cup. But we're back to league football. But before we get cracking on the Saudi Pro League, Matt, what did you think of the final, the Asian Cup final?
I'm going to say, actually, I'm going to move it back 1 game, and I'm going to talk about Akram Afif after his hat-trick of penalties in the final and that incredible the card celebration. It's one of the best celebrations I've seen in years. But I'm actually going to rewind it back to the last 4. I thought he was absolutely incredible against Iran. Akram Afif. He ran them ragged. Obviously, Iran, I guess, traditionally known as having one of the best defensive days in football, and I thought he was unbelievable in that tie. The hat-trick of finals the hat-trick of penalties in the final, that takes the headline. But he's basically, I think, in pretty much every game he contributed at least a goal or an assist. You can stretch that back to 2019 as well. So there's lots of arguments about the historical worth of this Qatar team as back-to-back champions. But I think just the consistency of Akram Afif over these last two tournaments is just incredible. And the final topped it off. I thought he was the best player in the tournament, and he delivered in that clutch moment.
Fantastic, Matt. The action in the Saudi Pro League is back on. There was a match last week. Of course, it had a postponed match because of their involvement in the Club World Cup. But this weekend sees proper return. We were already in the middle of the match week. I know you wrote a couple of brilliant pieces for us at Arab News, looking ahead to the rest of the season, really, and. You went through every club and you mentioned what business they did in the winter transfer window, their status and what the outlook is like. First off, let's touch on the transfers. Of course, a lot of people were waiting to see, will there be another major splurge on players? It was never going to happen really, in the sense that there's a limit to how many foreign players you can have anyway, and it just doesn't make sense for any coaches as well, purely from a football point of view, to have 10 new players in 2 windows, so they really have to work with what they've got. But of course, a few clubs, Ittifaq, Shabab, did strengthen. Just a quick word on the before we get into clubs, specific clubs in general. What did you make of the transfer window?
I think an interesting factor for me was that we've seen, as long-term viewers of Middle East football, that clubs in the past have been quite content to even just mothball players, that you sign them in the summer, they don't work out, they sit out the second half of the season. But I guess the stakes are that much higher in the Saudi Pro League now, particularly obviously the big clubs. It costs a lot of money to mothball these guys. So they're going to keep playing, they're going to keep the faith with them. That's something to address in the summer. I think if you look at the rest of the league as well, there are plenty of teams that did no business whatsoever. And, teams like Al Khalid, for example, I think they've been one of the success stories of the season so far. They didn't do anything. But then you compare that to clubs like Ettifaq, and it was a huge winter for them. It wasn't, for me, it was a huge, they've got behind Gerrard, haven't they? Before we were talking to you on Friday morning, last night, Ettifaq ended an 8-match winless streak in the Ocean Saudi League. And they backed Gerrard with a 2-year contract extension and also several, big additions, both domestically and foreign-based. So they booked the trend. And I had the pleasure last night of commentating on Ettifaq's game. And Ettifaq was brilliant in the second half. And the signing of Medran, he's a very interesting player for me. That Jordan Henderson, it didn't work out for Ettifaq. Both, I think, on the pitch he started well and tailed off. And then there's obviously all the conjecture about the off the pitch as well. But Medran is, he's been in the Saudi Pro League now for nearly 3 years, I think. And he was magical yesterday. He absolutely ran the midfield. And also with Toko Ekambi up top, he was, they signed him from APA. He joined APA in the summer after a long spell at Lyon. Did pretty well at APA, who were well in the relegation zone. And he's really added depth there. He knows the league and performed well. I think Ettifaq can really motor on from here. And then we're going to see the new Al-Shabaab soon, aren't we, as well? I mean, I'm really sad to see Ever Benega go. I'm such a fan of him as a player. But I tell you what, Ivan Rakitic, not a bad replacement.
Yeah, brilliant. Just touching on Ittifaq, going back to Ittifaq, how do you see the form of Gini Wijnaldum? Obviously things, he's gone off the radar a little bit over the last couple of years after leaving Liverpool. Things didn't really work out for him. But now with Henderson gone, is he more expected of him? Obviously in a leadership role. I mean, we know he scored a few goals as well. How do you see his form?
So yeah, he last night he was wearing the armband. He's a new captain, isn't he? And also he was watched on by Ronald Koeman and Nigel de Jong, so they're the 2 most powerful people in the Netherlands national team set up. So they were watching him last night. So maybe he knows if he keeps performing well, there's a chance of breaking back into the Dutch squad, which would be timely ahead of the summer. Last night he was definitely playing more advanced than I've seen him play before for Ettifaq. Missed one pretty glorious chance right at the start of the game, but then the second half he got the opener. He looked dangerous throughout. He really looked like he was enjoying playing with Medran. And also you've got Seko Fofana to come in there soon as well, the Al Nassr AFCON winner. So that midfield for Ettifaq looks really strong. And then also the attack as well. You've got Toko Ekambi and Dembele, who will know each other so well from Lyon. Damari Gray scored a great goal last night from a magical Medran pass. But yeah, I'm feeling quite bullish about Ettifaq. I feel that they've had a gamble on really changing the squad completely as well. Every part of the team, apart from goalkeeper, has had major changes to it, and it looks on this first evidence, which obviously we have to temper it with that. It was the first game. It looked good, and I guess that's the thing. If you gamble in mid-season, it can change the trajectory of your campaign, both good or bad. And at the moment, it looks like it's good.
Matt, we already mentioned that Al Nassr and Al Hilal, the top two, were back in Champions League action, but in the league, I mean, let's look at those two clubs. Before the break for the Asian Cup, week after week, we were saying there's a danger those two might break away from the rest, and of course, there's 7-point gap between Hilal and Al Nassr themselves, and then there's a bit of a gap, that was developing, should we say. Do you see it? I mean, how do you see their first half of the season? You've already, like I said, you wrote that brilliant article for us. How do you see their business and their outlook for the rest of the season? And can you see anyone else really challenging them for the title?
Sadly, no, but that's not necessarily a negative thing, and I'll move back to that in a second. But I'll say, you just look at the form of Al Hilal and Al Nassr, and it's absolutely insane, isn't it? They're both, I think, correct me if my maths is right, I think Al Nassr in second place are taking like 46 out of the last 51 points. You have to go back to September, the last time I think Al Hilal didn't win a game. They're both setting an absolutely searing pace at the top of the table. I thought Al Hilal, very sensible approach to the January market. Neymar, you're never going to get a like-for-like replacement for Neymar in the winter, so they just look to the back with Renan Lodi. And then for Nassr, I guess we'll discover what goes on with them. Will Ospina be coming in for the goalkeeper position? I think we could do a whole other podcast on what's going on with Al Nassr's goalkeeping position, but we'll maybe leave that out for now. But Ospina could be coming back. And then obviously Aziz Behic, highly experienced Australian defender. Will he just be used in the Champions League, or will he be used domestically as well? We'll see. Fofana going out the door for Al Nassr, which I can kind of understand. I think Fofana performed so well for Lens in France, didn't he, over the last few years? I think people were expecting huge things from him. Didn't quite come off, so maybe a change of environment at Ettifaq will help him as well. So yeah, let's see what goes on. But those two, for me, at the moment, are head and shoulders above the rest. But I do feel very confident about Al Ahly. I love the fact they're building momentum. They really, like with Jaisler, they've got it's a refreshing change of direction. You never see clubs in this region go for these young foreign managers, European-based managers like Jaisler. It just doesn't happen, really. And Al Ahly are just getting better and better as the season's going on. And I'm really intrigued to see if they can position themselves as like to make it a battle, a three-way battle for the title next season.
Brilliant, Matt. Here's a question for you. We know Al Hilal, are a winning machine. They winning the league means so much to them, as it does for Al Nassr, of course, and all the other clubs. But do you see a situation where if that gap remains? Like we know Al Hilal will fight to the death for that title. But do you see a situation where if there is a bit of a gap developing between Al Hilal and Al Nassr might switch their attention strongly to the Champions League?
Potentially. I think the only thing I will say is that if you look at Al Hilal's fixtures for the rest of the season, they got to go away to second and third place clubs Nassr and Al Ahly. So while that gap remains just about within touching distance, I say just about, it's 7 points, that's huge. Is that I think could keep Nassr going off? I would say as well, I can't imagine Cristiano Ronaldo dropping his levels at all, and he won't let his teammates drop the levels. He's just not. He's not made that way. He wants to score. Ronaldo wants to score as many goals as he can do this season, and that won't happen if his teammates decide to just sit out effectively games when Al Hilal aren't there. So I think Nassr will keep going, and I think momentum's such a huge thing. The example I'll use from Europe is that we see PSG normally completely coasting in League One, have so many star players, and when you get to the knockout stage of the Champions League, they're so undercooked that the first time they play a team from Spain or a team from England, they normally lose. So I think that's a lesson for Nassr there, that you've just got to keep going. You don't play a huge volume of games in Asian football. It's not as many games as you play in the top European leagues. So these players, they can keep going. They can play. You're probably playing 2 games every 10 days usually, although obviously May can get very busy. But yeah, so I think Nasser will keep going. I think it's all about also just setting the stall out as well, that, you know, this is the 2 Riyadh clubs. They're positioning themselves as global superpowers, emerging global superpowers, so that will happen if they just throw in the towel.
Matt, I mean, you mentioned Al Hilal. Speaking of, like, I want to touch on some of the players that have so far been players of the season. Obviously, at Al Hilal, top of the league, playing unbelievable football. Salam Dawri was voted Asia's Player of the Year, and Alexander Mitrovic has been sensational. I think a few others have settled in well. Malcolm's playing well, as is Milinkovic-Savic. So plenty there, you know. But do you think, despite all that, at Al Nassr, you know, we have the player of the season so far, and in Ronaldo?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to double check if he still is, but he came into this match week, didn't he? At top of the assist, top of the scoring charts as well. Yeah. 39 years old now, and there's that statistic the other day as well. He scored the brilliant late goal against Al Fayha, and that was, he scored in every calendar year from 2002 to 24. And I'd have to check. I've not gone back and checked the players in the GOAT conversation, like Pele, etc. I don't know if he came close to doing that. He got that breakthrough at 17, Pele. But that longevity, when football is more professional than it's ever been before, just to keep going, to keep doing it, to be motivated, to keep doing that, I think is remarkable. And yeah, he's been brilliant this season, Ronaldo. You know, his half season last year at Al Nassr, there were spells, weren't there, where he particularly didn't deliver in the big games, I don't think, for Nassr last season. But he's really stepped it up again this year. He's just fantastic. He's an absolute phenom, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we've spoken about, like, the top clubs. Quick word on the champions as well. You know, I mean, Etihad, obviously, they're not going to challenge for the title. I know, but, you know, like, I want you to, like, just give us a bit of a summation of, like, the rest of the clubs. But, you know, obviously leading those, Etihad. Al Ahly, you've already mentioned, you know, very promising. They're building something there. Etihad, it's been disappointing. But how do you see the rest of their season going?
So Etihad, I think they're a team caught between contrasting directions. You had, obviously, the Nuno Espirito Santo building from the back. They had an incredibly ironclad defence last season, and then they tried to switch it up a bit in the summer, bringing in big names, trying to be a bit more expansive, and it just didn't work out. On and off the pitch, they've had a terrible title defence. They went out early in the Club World Cup. Still alive in the King's Cup though, and that could provide, you know, a bit of a silver lining to their campaign. And I guess now that you cannot question at all that the CV of Marcelo Gallardo is insane. You know, just such a dominant force in South American football. Playing that River Plate team of his played great football. So it's if he is given space now to implant his views, basically, and that's the thing moving ahead for Etihad. And also with Gallardo, he did that largely with young players, emerging players at River Plate. Can you do that with Conte, Fabinho, Benzema, etc., Hamdallah, all well into their 30s? Is it possible to do that? So I think that's something to keep an eye on for the rest of the season for Etihad, is that can Gallardo keep Gallardo is someone who, for the last decade or so, has been heavily linked to Saudi clubs, and someone's finally been able to convince him to make the move to Saudi Arabia. So can he keep the goodwill? Can he keep the faith going into a summer window where I think you can expect plenty of changes in the squad again in the summer? So that's a challenge for him, and also success in the King's Cup, that will really help.
And the best of the rest. I mean, Al Tawun have been one of the clubs we've been keeping an eye on. Obviously, you already mentioned Ittifaq. You know, do you see any second half of the season surprises coming our way?
I think if you look at the table, there's a nice that spot between, I'd say, 4th to 8th now as we speak. I think there's not much separating the teams there. And Al Tawun, they've lost Madran. They brought in Christian Goanka, who, someone a little well from his time at Al Shabab, also won the title in the UAE a few years ago with Al Ain. I guess with Al Tawun, they have that incredible ability. They remind me of like Udinese in Serie A, or the best Southampton of the last few years, where they keep losing players, but then the results pretty much stay the same, particularly under Chamusca, who's a coach I have enormous respect for. They've got, a nice gap from them to Etihad, but then there's a 5-point gap to the top three, and the top three at the moment, that's looking like it's going to qualify you for the AFC Champions League Elite when that starts, which I think that's too much to ask of Al Tawun. But again, also looking around, Damak, obviously, and Kudu, the surprise success story this season. Right in the mix for the top scorer. We have Damak in 6th spot. They're doing well. Al Fatah has looked great under Bilic in spells. And they've really weathered that loss of Al Burakan. They're doing really well. And then I think Etihad, I think they looked great last night, and they look like they've done really smart business. Then, behind them, Al Weda and Al Khalid, both of them came ever so close to being relegated last season, and then they've done well in the transfer market, and they're now comfortably mid-table. And then the big story for me is what's going to go on with Al Shabab. They're so far down the rankings, aren't they?
Yeah, we'll wait to see how Rakitic settles in.
I love Rakitic. I love him. I think he's a brilliant player.
Massive addition, I think one of those players, such pedigree. Also, like we were mentioned about players of the season, I'd made a note earlier, I didn't mention it there. I've been a massive fan of how Anderson Talisca has played. I think he's been like one of the standout players. Of course, always going to be overshadowed by Cristiano and Mitrovic's goals and all that, but he's been brilliant every time I've seen him. Scored lots of goals as well. So
I think for him, the big one is that Rudy Garcia never was able to work out how to get Talisca and Ronaldo in the same team, but that's something that Castro has certainly been able to do. I've loved watching Al Nassr. I think they've been such a great watch this season. I think it's more than 50 goal contributions between Talisca, Mane and Ronaldo, and they've been great to watch. And I think that's the other side to this title race. You've got Al Hilal and Al Nassr are genuinely very good teams to watch, which makes it good. Because obviously, Al Ittihad, it was the emotion of it's more than, I think it was a decade or more, the gap between them winning the title last season. But they kind of ground it out. But Al Hilal and Nassr, anyone could enjoy watching their games.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Matt.
All good. Thanks, guys. Pleasure to be on.
Matt, but you haven't escaped just yet. I've got one final question for you. You thought, you see, Ali, he was trying to get away. I know
Here comes the prediction normally.
It does, it does indeed. You preempt me. No, listen, you touched on, you and Ali both touched on Champions League briefly there. Who's your prediction for Champions League glory?
I think Al Hilal are a cut above everyone in Asian football. And I think last night you had a completely full stadium in Sepahan. The atmosphere was unbelievable. And Al Hilal, obviously, had the red card, which did change things in Al Hilal's favour. But I think it was the fact that Al Hilal have the individual quality, they have the winning culture at the club, and they kept going until the end. And, it was obviously 1-1 going into injury time, and they scored 2 goals in an away tie in one of the most fevered atmospheres you'll see. And that, for me, separates them from the rest. I think and obviously, after last season, they want to get Asia is how Al Hilal really ranks themselves. Near misses last season, and they'll be determined to get that title. But Ronaldo are the same. He's going to feel exactly the same, Ronaldo. I don't think Ronaldo's support cast there's not much in it, but Ronaldo's support cast isn't quite as strong as the one found at Al Hilal. But the force of personality of Ronaldo, I think it's a great battle between Al Hilal and Ronaldo.
Great stuff. Interesting. Thanks, Matt. Ali, same question to you.
I honestly can't really add much more to what Matt said. It would be a fantastic story if Ronaldo was to win it. You can imagine, him having done it in Europe and now comes and does it here in the Middle East, in Saudi, would be a fantastic story. And I'm sure, he loves nothing more than records and scoring goals and winning trophies and adding more accolades to an unbelievable career. But can't see past Hilal as well. They really, a really good point Matt made. They see themselves as, Asia's best team, Saudi's best team, but Asia's best, one of Asia's best teams. They hold the record and all that. It's a little bit like, Matt, your team as well. It's like when Manchester United were winning for decades, or Liverpool before them and all that. When you just know you're the best, you expect to win, and both at home and in Europe. That mentality, and Al Hilal have it in spades. So I'm going to go for Al Hilal as well.
Great. Can't argue with that. Two of the most respected experts in Arab football on our podcast. Fantastic. That's it for another episode of Dawri. And as we say to you every week, good luck to your team, whoever it may be. And we'll catch you next week on the next episode of Dawri.